All right, everybody. Good morning. Happy Sunday. Hope you guys are doing well. It is the first day post 2026 NFL draft. It's over. The Seahawks have made all their picks. Everybody's made all their picks. The Seahawks have made UDFA signings, and while technically that may not be completely over, it basically is. I'm going to save UDFA stuff for a later video, but for now, for this video, since it is the morning after, I want to take a step back and take a look at this draft class for the Seattle Seahawks. 2026 in the books, not the most inspiring draft class ever made, but how did the Seahawks do? This video is sponsored by Prize Picks, more on them a little bit later. But yeah, the Seattle Seahawks went into the day with 4 draft picks, and they ended up with 8 of them. Now, in order to do that, one of the things they did was give up a 4th round pick next year, but the others were just duplicating the picks that they had. They didn't even trade any of the players they had that maybe could have been tradable. So obviously, when you're looking at this draft class, there's kind of a big 3, and then there's a 4th kind of tweener between significant and minor. And then there are other draft picks that right now look fairly minor, although we don't know what's going to happen once these guys get into camp. So looking at this draft class as a whole, it's pretty easy to figure out what's going on here, right? This is a team that just won the Super Bowl and is trying to maximize their opportunity to win another one this year while the iron is hot and the window is open. And I've talked about that approach at length. It's understandable. I understand why this team would want to try to give themselves the best possible chance to win another Super Bowl, because winning the Super Bowl is that's kind of the thing that you are doing this for. But when you take an approach like that, you do kind of inevitably end up leaving meat on the bone. And that's kind of the best way I can put it when I look at this draft overall. Although I would say, for me, most of my concern, and I don't even know if concern is the right word, but most of the suboptimal decision making that happened with this team, I think happened in the first round with Jadarian Price. But other than that, I think the team did a pretty good job. I think that the value is fair for the picks they made that I actually know about. And that is one thing I'm going to say here. There are 3 players in this 8-player class that I did not evaluate at all pre-draft. So I can only say so much about that. But those are also 3 players that are fringe back of roster guys or even practice squad guys, even if they end up working out. So this class, it's pretty simple, right? You look at the Seattle Seahawks and what they lost over the last couple months here. They lose Ken Walker within the first half hour of free agency starting back in March. So they need a running back. So their first pick comes up. They take the generally considered to be best running back remaining in the class in Jadarian Price. And I've spent a lot of time talking about Price on this channel already. I don't want to spend too much time reiterating the points, but what I'm going to say is this. Jadarian Price, if he stays healthy and he has a productive camp to where he ramps up appropriately on this offense, he's going to get about 200 touches, I imagine. I imagine he will touch the ball close to 200 times this year, and there is something to be said for that. That is an impact on this team that you could not have gotten from very many other players that you could have gotten at 32. If you like sports, the best way to make them better and more exciting is using Prize Picks, where it always feels good to be right. Prize Picks, all you got to do is pick more or less on your favorite players' projections and build lineups with a few taps. It's the daily fantasy stuff, but it's made super easy over there. Whatever sport you're into, give it a shot. And right now, Prize Picks is hooking up users with $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. All you have to do is use promo code HMA. I've had a great time on Prize Picks so far. It makes this daily fantasy thing very easy, and it makes watching the games way more exciting. Be sure to check out the social feeds feature so you can share lineups with your friends and tail partners or even fade their picks. Right now, Prize Picks is offering odds on the NFL draft. You have who's going to go where, what each team is going to do, how many of each position is going to go in each round, and so on and so on. Get on over to Prize Picks. Take advantage of that. So, download Prize Picks today, America's #1 sports app, and remember to use the promo code HMA. And remember, always gamble responsibly. So, that's ultimately the motivating factor here. We wanted the player that could make the biggest immediate impact on the team. And I do think Price is going to make an impact on this team. He is probably going to be the starting running back. And even if he's not, it doesn't really matter that much because he's still going to be playing enough and getting the ball enough to where he has the impact of a starter. I mean, who else is it going to be? Charbonnet's not going to be back for a while. We know this. George Holani is not really somebody I think can take on a lot of touches over the course of a football game, productively anyway. And Emmanuel Wilson's a nice player, and I know we're excited about him, and I'm excited about him too, but we don't have a lot of evidence that he can be a high volume guy. So they went with the guy that is capable of helping them the most in the short term. And I'd even expand that short term out more than 1 year. So that was the logic behind the Jadarian Price pick, and I'm more amenable to it than I would be most years. If the Seahawks were not coming off a season where they were the best team in the league or one of the best teams in the league, I would definitely come down a little bit harder on a pick that is designed to be so short term and immediate rather than the long term gain of getting a more impactful player who plays a more high value position. But I think that it is fine in this context. And one thing that deserves some discussion is the possibility that the 49ers were going to take him at 33. Some people have theorized that. It's possible, right? So Jadarian Price, that's your first pick. And then you get to Bud Clark, and you're like, okay, who did we lose after we lost Ken Walker? We lost Kobe Bryant, our safety. And the good news is we have Ty Okada in the house now. He signed his tender, so he's going to be taking the place of Kobe Bryant immediately. But is Ty Okada somebody that can give you 17 quality games as a safety in this league? We don't know. We know he was good for us when Kobe Bryant and Julian Love were missing time last year. We don't know if he can actually become a consistently reliable starter over the long term. And even if he can, he's only under contract for 1 year right now because of the tender. And Julian Love is getting to the point now where if he has another injury-prone season or if he just doesn't have a great season overall, he might not be long for this roster. So Bud Clark kind of combines the two different elements here. Not only is Bud Clark going to be a good player for the right now because we needed safety depth. We don't really have a reliable backup safety unless you count Eman Warrior. We clearly like him better at nickel corner. And also, he's a good pick for down the line because I think that we will be needing a safety in the near future here. Either Okada will move on, Love will move on, or maybe both. Remember, Love did miss a big chunk of the 2026 season. So if he has another year where he gets hurt and misses a bunch of time, I don't think you can really justify keep bringing him back on his big salary or extending him for the 2027 season. So again, you're mostly talking about the short term with a guy like Bud Clark, but in a way that makes sense for a team that needs to secure their safety depth. And I do think Bud Clark was a good value pick as well. So I'm not saying that we made some big swing and miss here. I'm not saying that we reached dramatically in order to get this guy. So it's different than Price, but the ultimate goal here with drafting someone like him is the same. And then you have Julian Neal, the Arkansas cornerback. And once again, who did we lose other than Kobe Bryant and Ken Walker? We lost Reek Woolen. Yes, we did keep Josh Jobe, but Josh Jobe was on the team last year and Woolen still played a lot. So we need another corner, and Julian Neal is that corner. So Julian Neal comes in here as the 99th overall pick, very, very late third round pick. A lot of size, a lot of strength. He is not necessarily the speedster that Reek Woolen is, but there is going to be some comparison there because physically they look somewhat similar. And he is a good athlete. He's just not fast in a straight line, is Julian Neal. I will say that. But once again, you lose a player. You're trying to take care of your short-term needs because you want to give yourself a chance to repeat. you go get Julian Neal. Now, I do think that Julian Neal has the potential to really help this team over the next extended period of time and could potentially become a very high value player. So, again, I don't think the Seahawks were obsessed with the short term with the Julian Neal pick. I think that the Julian Neal pick is a nice balance. He's somebody that can help us now, because the thing to keep in mind here is that if you look at our secondary going into 2026, Devin Witherspoon missed some time last year. Josh Jobe missed a little bit of time last year, I believe. Kobe Bryant, well, Kobe Bryant's gone, so I won't include him, but Julian Love missed a lot of time last year. And of the guys we lost, remember, Kobe Bryant and Reek Woolen both missed games last year too. Not a lot, but a little bit. So the odds of you getting through the whole season with a fully healthy secondary is low. And right now, if I had to guess, by the time we get to the season, Bud Clark is going to be the first safety off the bench, and Julian Neal is going to be the first outside corner off the bench for the Seattle Seahawks. So unless you count Nick Emanwari for either of those considerations, those guys are going to be called up pretty quickly in the event of injury or bad performance or anything that requires us to test our depth. So they are going to help now. They're not going to start now, I don't think. I can't see a scenario where either of these guys starts day one, but I think they will start eventually, and they are going to help us now. And those are obviously your big three. Everything that happened after Julian Neal for the Seahawks is notable, but I also don't think it's entirely reasonable to expect 5th, 6th, and 7th round picks to be big time players in a draft like this. If you end up getting good depth and backups and special teamers in the 5th and 6th and 7th round of a draft like this, then that's fine. I don't have a big issue with that. It's understandable. There's a little bit of an exception for somebody like a Beau Stevens because you traded a 4th round pick next year to get him. But one thing that's worth noting is that you don't want to have too many draft picks in one class because it becomes impossible to keep all your draft picks. You're going to draft, like before this trade, we had 12 picks next year lined up. So 12 picks, if you've got another Super Bowl caliber roster, whether or not we win the Super Bowl or not, if you have a really, really strong roster, you're going to be going into 2027 thinking to yourself, we are relatively set. We just need a handful of rookies that are going to help us, not 12, and not even really 11. You might end up keeping like 5 of them, and then a lot of your picks get wasted. So giving up a 4th round pick now to get somebody that you like in this draft, and clearly we liked Beau Stevens, is understandable. And I think this team will trade more draft picks between now and the actual draft because, again, they know that they do not need to stock up on a bunch of late round guys if they really like their roster. And for the most part, I think they do. They're going to lose some stuff between now and the next offseason, but not everything. So I'm amenable to that. Now, that does put a little bit of an onus on Beau Stevens to be valuable to us. I think he can be, even if he ends up just being a utility backup for the interior offensive line. And I do admit, I kind of feel like that's what Stevens is going to end up being. I think he's going to be a backup guard, backup center. I think he has a very good chance of being ultimately a center because of how short his arms are. But even if he does manage to make it at guard, I am not convinced he will ever be like a good or even average starter. He is very physically limited. He is not athletic at all. He is well-versed with zone schemes, but to me, that makes him comparable to Olu Oluwatimi. So Oluwatimi doesn't start on this team, and he does occasionally play because he needs to, and he's not a bad player, but he has a limited amount he can really offer the Seahawks. So Beau Stevens of Iowa is, I think, going to be a valuable backup. I don't know if he'll ever ascend beyond that, but that's okay. I can live with that, especially if his acquisition gives us clearance to trade somebody for future capital, like Oluwatimi. That's one thing that I think is on the table here. We trade Oluwatimi for some kind of draft capital next year, and then we plan on packaging picks in 2027 to move up to reduce the number of picks we have. Maybe we trade Christian Haynes now because we look at Christian Haynes and we think to ourselves, it's just not working here. Let's reset the clock a little bit with a slightly cheaper player and allow Christian Haynes to have a change of scenery. So those things are all on the table. So yeah, Beau Stevens. I think that pick is fine. A lot of people are looking at Stevens and thinking, okay, this is the guy who replaces Anthony Bradford. I'm not convinced of that. I don't even know if Stevens is really a right guard, but even if he is, a fifth round rookie in a bad draft is not going to be better than Anthony Bradford immediately. You're trying to buy a lottery ticket at that point. So Stevens is kind of where this draft starts to deviate a little bit from what I was talking about with the pure addressing of need. This feels more like just getting a player that you really like and think can add value and are trying to maybe open up the door for you to move one of your backup offensive linemen in a trade. And then you have some picks where it doesn't matter that much. You get past, 200 or at about 200 in this draft, it's just not really going to be moving the needle. There are some picks we could have made that I think would have been bigger impact, but even those, clearly there's something going on, like Xavier Harris. Xavier Harris was my BPA when the draft ended. I had him in the third round. He did not get drafted, and it seems like the reason why that happened is because of off the field issues that people think are going to kind of disqualify him from ever being a meaningful NFL player. There's some other players that I liked that didn't get drafted, but at a certain point, you just have to look at it and go, okay, maybe I just had the wrong idea. Maybe there's something going on here I don't know about, right? Maybe there's something with the medicals. So you learn to live with it. And the other thing to keep in mind here, and I don't want to spend too long on this video, the other thing to keep in mind here, the Seattle Seahawks have told us they don't look at every player. There are a lot of players that are good, that are going to get drafted, that have draftable grades, that the Seahawks do not bother looking at because they don't have time and they don't want to stretch themselves too thinly. They want to focus in on a subset of guys that they think they're really going to like, really go deep on them and really understand which ones they like and which ones they end up not liking as much. So, I can sit here and say, why didn't this team take Gennings Dunker? Why didn't this team take this guy? Or why didn't they take Brandon Cisse? Why didn't they take et cetera, et cetera? They may have not really looked at those guys that much. Well, we know they looked at Cisse because it was a top 30 visit, but they may have not looked at some of the guys that we wanted that they didn't draft. It is eminently possible that they just didn't scout them, didn't really evaluate them, and we're just like, we're focused in on this group, and we're going to pick from this group because this is the group we feel like we understand. And them choking up on their big board in recent years is, in their own words, a big reason why they've drafted better. So I don't think you can go against that philosophy right now. But Emmanuel Henderson Jr. seems like he'll be a good special teamer. I don't think he'll be much more than that personally, but Henderson Jr. does strike me as someone that can help, not just as a returner, but also on cover teams. So maybe that's his venue to make the team. He's going to be competing with guys like Ricky White and Cody White for the roster spot. That is the thing. There's only really one roster spot for him to get, but he may be a practice squatter. We do have room on the practice squad for more receivers that are better than, like I said, maybe a Ricky White. Even if you believe Cody White's kind of locked into the roster, which I think is very likely to be the case, Henderson can be a practice squad guy, and somebody's going to get hurt. You got very lucky with Cooper Kupp not getting hurt last year. He only missed one game, but very good chance that Cooper Kupp misses some time this year just because he's an older player. There are other players on this team. Shaheed has missed games in his past due to injury. Shaheed almost missed the Niners game last year because of an injury. The Week 18 game, I mean. So it's not a bad idea. And this is a player who could absolutely make it to the practice squad. Andre Fuller, I did look at him a little bit. And again, this is definitely the part of the draft where they kind of just started taking players they liked. Andre Fuller is a player they liked. They used a top 30 visit on him. And I do think he was pretty good value here at 236. I think that was about appropriate for him. Maybe he was even a little bit better than that. But I will admit that there isn't a ton of room for him. But I also think this team wants to really kind of let things get a little bit violent in the cornerback room if they need to. Like Nehemiah Pritchett, I like him. We used a pick on him not that long ago. I do think there's some positive stuff with him, but I do think they want to give the team wants to give themselves the opportunity to do better than Nehemiah Pritchett, also for a cheaper price with Fuller, if they feel like Fuller is coming along nicely during training camp. So Fuller may take Pritchett's spot, and that may end up being better for this team. We are deep at corner, but that doesn't mean that Fuller can't make this team still. Devin Eastern, we don't really have a lot going on at nose tackle. So a guy like Devin Eastern, yeah, he can actually impact this team a little bit now. If he's better than Brandon Peely, then Eastern's your guy. And even if he's not, there's not a lot on the practice squad. There's what, Quinton Bohanna, maybe? I don't even know if we gave him the futures deal. I can't remember. So Devin Eastern really has an opportunity here. And then you have Michael Dansby, who I know very little about other than the fact that he's very fast. And he was part of a good Arizona secondary in 2026. But again, we didn't need a cornerback. I understand that. I know this guy has a long shot to make the roster. I know that we got through all this and we didn't draft any edge rushers, which that is the one player we lost last year that we haven't done anything to mitigate yet, Boye Mafe. But at this point, also, who cares? I really, when you think about it, no edge rusher you're going to get at the back end of the 7th round is going to move the needle here. And there were guys I liked, like Tyreek Sapp. I was a fan of Tyreek Sapp. I think maybe could have been a valuable player, but he's not moving the needle as a rookie. And I think it's pretty clear what this team plans to do at edge rusher, by the way. I think they've already kind of telegraphed themselves there. They are going to draft, or they're going to sign a veteran. And I expect Dante Fowler to be in the building at some point this offseason, and possibly one other guy as well, which, if they do that, doesn't leave room for another edge. And even if they don't get two, they're almost certainly going to get one. And maybe and Mike McDonald already shouted this out a bit, guys like Jared Ivey, guys like guys who we kept on the team last year, who didn't play really, but we seem to see something there, or else why would we keep them around? So some 7th round edge rusher is not going to be better than Jared Ivey. As much as Jared Ivey is whatever at this point because he hasn't done anything, this is still better a route for immediate returns than anything you could have done, especially this late in the draft. And that kind of goes back to the thing that I've been talking about this whole time. For the most part, other than what happened later in day 3, Beau Stevens on kind of, this was a draft about firming things up in the short term. And that's not my favorite approach for the draft. It's not. But I think it's understandable for the team in this position. I do continue to push back a little bit, saying you didn't have to put yourself in this situation. You could have spent a little more money on a running back in free agency and put yourself in a spot where you didn't feel like you had to get Jadarian Price or else. But that comes with its own downfalls as well. So at the end of the day, I don't think they did anything bad over the last few days. I think they did a couple things maybe suboptimally, but suboptimal is kind of the name of the game in a draft like this. So that is my semi-brief. It ended up not being so brief, but that is my run through of the 2026 draft class for the Seattle Seahawks. 8 picks. The first 3 are the ones that actually carry weight, with a little bit of the 4th pick as well. The others feel more like throwing a dart at a dartboard, but I don't think they're bad picks either. If you get a dart for the dartboard in the 6th or 7th round of this draft, that's fine. Okay, so let me know what you guys think. That is my read on this draft class. Good job. Good job. I'm not going to say great job, but it's a good job. And we are locked and loaded to try to go repeat in 2026. And it's hard to argue with that, man. All right. Everyone have a good rest of your day. Please like the video on your way out. Go Hawks. And more videos coming later today.